The year was 1962. The Cold War was at its peak. The Soviet Union was the great rival, and Fidel Castro's Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida, had become its closest ally. Only a year earlier, the Bay of Pigs invasion had collapsed in humiliation. The CIA's attempt to overthrow Castro failed. Kennedy was embarrassed, and Washington was desperate to restore its strength. The year was 1962. The Cold War was at its peak. Kennedy embarrassed after the Bay of Pigs. The plan read like a catalogue of staged horrors. A U.S. ship blown up, civilian airliners hijacked, bombs planted. The Pentagon wanted action. But there was a problem. The American people were not eager for another conflict, especially one that could spark direct confrontation with the Soviet Union. Public opinion stood in the way, unless, that is, opinion could be manufactured. Kennedy refused. Operation Northwoods was rejected. For decades, Northwoods remained a secret, until the 1990s. False flags were no longer dismissed as conspiracy theory. Here was proof. This was the origin of Operation Northwoods. History tells us something uncomfortable. Sometimes the threat doesn't come from outside the walls of power. Sometimes it's written into the memos inside them. The plan read like a catalogue of staged horrors. A U.S. ship blown up in Guantanamo Bay and blamed on Cuba. Civilian airliners hijacked or shot down, with the evidence pointing to Havana. Bombs planted in Miami or Washington to create panic. Even Cuban refugees, people who had fled Castro's regime, proposed as potential targets in staged assassinations. The documents spoke of funerals and victims. Even if they were fabricated, everything was designed to produce outrage, anger, and a demand for retaliation. The words were cold, but their meaning was clear. Frighten the people, frame the enemy, and the path to war opens. In March 1962, the proposals were presented to President John F. Kennedy. He had already seen how secret operations could backfire during the Bay of Pigs. Now he was being asked to approve deception and bloodshed against his own citizens. Kennedy refused. Operation Northwoods was rejected. General Lyman Lemnitzer, the plan's champion, was soon reassigned. But the rejection didn't erase the fact that such a plan had been written, reviewed, and seriously considered at the highest levels of the U.S. military. For decades, Northwoods remained a secret. The papers sat in government files, unseen and unknown. Then in the 1990s, the documents were declassified. Journalists and researchers were stunned by what they found. In 2001, James Bamford's book Body of Secrets revealed the full details, and Operation Northwoods became part of the public record. The revelation was shocking. False flags were no longer dismissed as conspiracy theory. Here was evidence that America's leaders had once considered sacrificing their own citizens to manipulate opinion. Northwoods showed how fragile the line can be between security and manipulation. If such plans were drawn up in 1962, how many others might still be hidden? How many schemes were proposed, stamped top secret, and then locked away? And more than that, it forced the public to ask an unsettling question: if it happened once, could it happen again? History tells us something uncomfortable. Sometimes the threat doesn't come from outside the walls of power. Sometimes it's written into the memos inside them. That was Operation Northwoods, a plan never executed, but forever remembered as the day America's leaders considered declaring war on their own people's trust.